Hi guys, it's Medically Amber, and if you're new here, welcome to my channel. My name's Amber and I'm an undergraduate medicine with a foundation year student studying at the University of Nottingham. And in today's video, I'm going to be talking to you about how I got A stars in my GCSE sciences. So if you would like to hear all about my various different revision methods that I use to get my grades and also any tips and tricks that I have, then please keep on watching. Tip number one, start revising early. For all your GCSE sciences, there is such a large amount of information that you have to cover, and it's in a relatively short amount of time from when you start year 11 to when exam time does come up. And believe me, if you're not prepared for your exams and you don't start early, I'll crawl upon you, and next thing you know, you're being slapped in the face by tons of work, you're trying to cram it, gets a little bit stressful. That's not me, but I know people that went through that. So to avoid all of this cramming happening and you starting to feel overwhelmed, the best thing to do is to start revising early. For my GCSE sciences, I started to revise at the beginning of year 11. I started to make my notes at a slow pace, just reviewing them, getting them down, making sure they were available for when the real time does occur. And then as it got closer to exam dates, I increased my workload and started to become more intense in my revision. By starting early, it ensures that you don't feel overwhelmed when it comes up to revision time, because you have spaced out your revision, and this ensures that you can cover all topics without having to cram anything, and it makes sure that you actually understand everything that is going into your brain. Tip number two, use past papers. Past papers in your GCSE sciences are like your best mate, because it is literally impossible for you to get top grades if you're literally just reading out of a book. It's impossible, because you're only just taking the information out, you're not working with it, it's not melding it in your brain. Whereas using past papers, if you've read up on, I don't know, a topic about biological molecules, if you've read up on that, if you can then apply that into a past paper question, you're using that knowledge in your brain and really thinking about it. You're more likely to remember it more because you have used that information and you've worked with it. And also it's really important that you use past papers because it allows you to get adjusted to the question styles. So in GCSE sciences, sometimes they like to ask you questions in a very way, like it's never straight to the point. It's always like, okay, this way, then that way, then that way, then you know what I mean? It's never straight to the point. They like to try and trick you out. We're not going to let them do that. No. So what you need to do is you need to really get used to the way they ask questions in your GCSE paper, because at least then you can really know how you have to use your knowledge, what information you have to pick out, and get adjusted to that way of thinking and writing down your answers. Tip number three is use your exam board specifications. Your exam board, whether it be AQA, Edexcel or OCR, they are more than likely going to have a specification that you can access on their website, and I would highly recommend that you use this because it allows you to really pinpoint exactly what you need to know in your topic or subject, and so you can really get your notes narrowed down to exactly what you need to know. Also, a good idea is to use your specification to make a checklist. So for my GCSEs, I actually made a checklist so that once I've done that topic, I could have ticked it off and say, okay, I know this topic well, I've done all the notes for it, and that's it. Tip number four is act as if mocks are the real thing. During my GCSEs, it was so common for people to just not take their mocks seriously, and so they kind of took it as a joke. Don't be that person, don't be daft, because your mocks are the perfect time for you to get adjusted to this way of revising, getting used to the exam stress, getting used to how exams feel in general, and so mocks should be really prepared for as if it is the real thing. Also, it's a really good way to check if your revision techniques are useful, whether they're not really working for you, and it also tests your knowledge to see what topics you need to perfect on more so. Tip number five is use flashcards for memorising equations. For me, equations were always the most annoying part of GCSE sciences because you had to remember so many, and sometimes you got a little bit fumbled up in your head. So what I would advise is to use flashcards to memorise your equations, because by doing this you are once again testing your knowledge, making sure you're understanding it. You're not just memorising it. By using a flashcard, you're looking at it and then you really got to think, what equation would I have to use to answer this question? Also, really useful tip that I use for my exam is that as soon as you get into the exam room and you start your paper, find somewhere on the paper to just write down every equation that you need for that subject, whether it be chemistry, biology or physics. Write them all down every single one of them, because at least then you've got that knowledge out your brain. It's on there, you can refer back to it at any point, and you don't have to stress about forgetting it because it's fresh in your brain and you've already put it down on the paper at the beginning. Tip number 6 is make sure that you know your practicals inside and out. If there was one thing that I hated about GCSE sciences, it was practical questions. I hated them. Sometimes they would ask the question in a way and you'd be like, I don't know what this practical is. I don't know when I did this practical. I don't know who this is and what they want from me. It happens, okay? It does, trust me. For practical questions, you need to make sure that you know your practicals very well. Only way you can do that is literally for every practical that you've done, make sure you read upon the method, review it, reread it, do all of that. Make sure you learn about the safety precautions, make sure you know the results and what they mean, because you could be asked questions about any of these things within your exam, and the last thing that you want is to fumble up on these type of questions because they tend to be big markers, and obviously we do not want to lose any marks. And the final tip is make your notes effectively. In GCSEs, I made the mistake of doing my notes kind of like, you know, those Pinterest notes where they're really cute and have cute coloured fonts and stuff. Yeah, that took time, that was long. Very long. You don't want that for your GCSEs. Learn from my mistakes. You do not have the time doing pretty fonts on your note. You don't have time for that. I would much prefer that if you spent that time doing past paper questions or question banks, something that actually makes you apply the knowledge that you've got in your head and really utilize it so that you are memorizing it more. So for your notes, the best thing that I can advise is keep it simple, keep it condensed, do it in Word, just do bullet points, because at least then you're really specific as to what you need to know and you're not dawdling on. Just takes way less time. And that is all for this video, so I hope you enjoyed it. I know that when I was going through GCSEs, I found it so stressful for my sciences because they were really important for me, and there was so much that I had to cover, and I was quite scared about not being able to do it in a good amount of time. But trust me, if you follow through these tips that I use for my GCSEs, then you will be absolutely fine and all will be well, and you will get those top grades, I promise you. So as always, please like and subscribe and comment any other video suggestions that you have for me, and I'll see you in the next video. Bye.